What's going on, Bills Mafia? Welcome. Happy Monday. It's a good Monday. It's a victory Monday, and it's Buffalo late night. Again, welcome. Glad to have you guys all here tonight. I am your host, Thomas DeLoss, and thank you for tuning in. I'm glad that you're here, and if you're not here and you're listening on Spotify, happy Tuesday. I'm glad that you're checking in with us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. That being said, you can find all of our content free on all social media streaming platforms. That includes Spotify and, of course, YouTube. And if you are right now watching on Twitter, come in, hop over on our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, join the conversation. Obviously, we'd love to have you. That being said, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have two very special guests, one of which you've seen many times, as he is my savior and a guy that I lean on a little too much because he's frequently available at this time of night, especially with kids that are now sleeping, which works out. That being said, our first guy is the co-host of the Going Deep podcast, as well as a very frequent contributor on Cover One, and that would be Kevin Massare. And secondly, for the first time tonight, we have the host of the Circle the Wagons podcast on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. That would be my man, Nate. Gentlemen, how we doing?
I'm excited to be here, man. Like, it's just a great day. Great victory Monday. Kind of focusing in on the 17-7 Raiders Chiefs game going on in the background. Raiders are still driving here with a controversial roughing the passer call here coming up against Derek Carr to keep their drive going. So very interesting point of discussion if you'd rather have them play off of a loss or off of a win. I'm from the mindset of I don't really care what the Chiefs do, win or loss. I just want them to lose because at the end of the day, you're going for jockeying for position. I don't really think it matters in terms of are they better off a loss or not. So just excited to kind of hone in, kind of dive into this beat down that they had yesterday. And quite frankly, the Bills are getting it done analytically in ways that I don't even think many of us thought they could get done. And I still think the majority of Bills fans would sign off on 4-1 through this time of year. Even if they want that Dolphins game, I still think you commit to 4-1 through a pretty tough first five and a couple more here before it gets fairly weak, I guess, depending on what you think of the Jets and Patriots. It gets fairly weak here in a few weeks.
Yeah, Thomas. First of all, thanks all for having me on the podcast and the vidcast. Obviously, always cool to be on with Kevin. Kevin's a man, as we talked a bunch of times before, and also Kyle, who's going to be on too. I'm still riding high off this Bills victory, and I feel like Kevin already had like 3 or 4 really good questions to start the podcast. But I'm definitely looking forward to the Chiefs. I'm watching the game right now. I'm still riding high off that win. That was just. It's funny. The game started where the Bills, they muffed the kickoff and, they started their own 2-yard line. It got to 3rd and 10. You're like, oh, great. All right. Classic. But we're all still, PTSD from the drought years and, 98-yard touchdown and they never looked back. I'm still feeling great. I'm still, on fire. This is a great time to be a Bills fan. I'm really excited for this next week because Kevin mentioned, the weaker part of the schedule. After the Chiefs and the Packers, man, it starts to look a little bit simpler. 4-1, sure it could be 5-0. 4-1 is great if you get us through the next few weeks and we're at 5-2 or whatever. I think that's a great way to start the season.
Definitely don't disagree with any of those sentiments. It is wonderful on Monday. It's even better for me because I started the show about 4 months ago. I have yet to have a victory Monday or not a victory Monday, which is really good. So it's worked out well. The only show that I wasn't actually doing was the Dolphins show, and I was sick as a dog. So we're doing good. Everything's going really well at this point. But yeah, yesterday's game was another one for the record books, obviously, literally with Josh setting a franchise not OT record at 424 yards. I mean, what can't this team do? Quite frankly, you're seeing a team that, I mean, even statistically, the NFL saying is Josh Allen, Gabriel Davis, and Stephon Diggs the best trio in the NFL right now. How many times would we have 10 years ago, if you had told us, oh, in 10 years now, you're going to have a quarterback and 2 wide receivers that are going to be quite possibly looked at as the best trio in the NFL, we would have all balked at that idea. That being said, it is here, it is now, and that is this team. So, like you mentioned, Nate, we do have an injury specialist here at Buffalo Late Night. That is our guy, Dr. Kyle Trimble. Kyle is part of Banged Up Bills. Kyle, how are we doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. It's awesome Victory Monday.
Heck yeah. Gotta love it. Kyle, obviously, we are coming out of that victory against the Steelers yesterday. How are we looking? How did we fare?
A lot better than in weeks past. I'll say that there.
Mhm.
The only injury that we had get reported was Jordan Phillips. He left with a hamstring injury again. This is after he suffered the original hamstring injury in week 2 against the Titans with that Matt Milano pick 6. He missed the next 2 games, was questionable heading into this game. And then I didn't think he'd play because they're more conservative. They were, the Bills were favored by 14. I'm like, let the big man rest another week here. Gets out there. He does something late in the second quarter, about 4 minutes left, and he kind of pulled up lame, left for the rest of the quarter. Didn't think he'd come back after being questionable. Came back out for 2 more plays, and he just didn't look right. He couldn't even get down to his stance for the first play he was on with about 14 minutes left in third quarter. And then the second play, he tried engaging with his block, and it just didn't happen, and he motioned to come out. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play this next week because you have a bye coming up. You can maximize your rest while minimizing the games missed. And then everybody else is looking pretty good from an injury standpoint that did come back. Obviously, some surprises that didn't play, including Isaiah McKenzie with his concussions. And, that's about it right now. But hopefully we're starting to trend upward with regards to our injuries because it's a lot of work to try to keep up the Bills injuries than everything else I'm doing over at Banged Up Bills.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was one of the sentiments before the season was let's hope we have a short segment with you each week. It hasn't been the case.
No.
Our injury report has been incredibly long. I am stunned that they had Jordan Phillips play. Hamstrings are notoriously one of the worst in terms of lingering effects. So I'm surprised they didn't wait either till the Chiefs game or even quite possibly after the bye week. I feel like that would have been just a better situation, especially a guy as big as he is. The McKenzie one, I'm not surprised that he's still in protocol with everything going on right now. The Bills are going to toe the line very carefully because they don't want to end up in the limelight, quite frankly. But the one I was a little bit interested was Dawson Knox. It seemed that one just kind of popped up on us.
Yeah, he had the hamstring injury. He did go to the injury tent in the first quarter during the Bills' second offensive series against the Ravens. Don't know what he went there for because he was coming in with a back and hip designation. And then even prior to that in week 2, he suffered a right foot injury. So he's dealing with a whole bunch of different stuff. So I don't know if he went in there to get anything looked at or if it was just, I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But he's been known to be beat up quite a lot during the season. Still produces, but it is what it is with him. So hopefully he comes back next week because we're going to need him for sure against the Chiefs.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, like you said, we are heading into the Chiefs this weekend. We are going against a very big matchup, a rematch of the playoffs last year. Any notable injuries for the Kansas City Chiefs that are something that we should keep tabs on at this point?
I haven't looked too much into them yet. They're on my docket, but I've not looked into them. I don't recall them losing anybody big right now, so I don't think they're coming to fully healthy, like as most teams are at this point. But I don't think they've lost anybody major, like we've seen around the league with your 49ers, your Ravens, some of the other teams that were just beat up and already lost for the season.
Yeah, I know they did tonight. They did have Harrison Butker. Their kicker was inactive tonight, so that's obviously something of note to keep tabs on. But obviously, that's another team that you just want to make sure that you're looking at everything because with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, the guy is so formidable. It's almost one of those things you need to know what's going on every step of the way to make sure that you are covering all bases for a guy like him.
Absolutely.
Anything else that you can think of going into week 6? And Nate, Kevin, if you have any questions yourselves.
I'm looking at the injury report for Kansas City right now. They have a lot of guys on there, but no way of no other than Juju Smith-Schuster with a quad hamstring, and then
Mm.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling with the abdomen, maybe practicing full all this week. So they have guys
Right.
on the injury report, but it's not anybody of note. But then regarding the Bills, I'm hoping that we get way more guys back. Christian Bedford could come back if he plays with the club. I don't know if that they want to. Hopefully Dawson Knox can come back. I don't think Jake Kumar is going to be back. Ed Oliver looks pretty good out there. Jordan Poyer, I expect to be coming back at this point, just because he was able to kind of be out and stay out. We'll see what happens with this year, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get everybody back at full bore. And then the only thing I can think of is Trey White. We still don't have any information on him. I'm almost waiting for, this might be a bad idea, but I'm almost waiting for Twitter to start making up reasons why Trey White's not back yet. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen it all yet, but there's something going on that we don't know. I don't think anything bad, but there's variables that either we didn't consider or we don't know what's going on that's leading them to make the decision not to bring him back yet. Even if he does get activated this week, I don't see him playing in the Chiefs game anyway. So it might be best just to keep him out after the bye and then let him ramp up for that true second half.
Well, I think if they activate him, now, he'll still fall within the 21-day window, so they can play with the Packers or against the Packers after the bye.
He could,
but again, one thing that they did note was that there is one active roster spot and one practice squad available spot. So definitely there for him or any other move for that matter. But something to keep tabs on for sure.
Exactly. I got one more thing. Breaking down the fourth wall here. So last time I talked with Nate, I was on his show, I think last year. And this is the only time my daughter's done this. She projectile vomited midway through the show as I was on with Nate. And so I had to stop the show and it was help my wife clean up and go back and finish the show. It was awkward. I'm just like, wait, this is the first time I've talked with Nate since that all happened. She's not puked on anybody since then or before then. So my daughter's probably still up, but she's not puking. So that's, knock on wood, a better thing. But I just thought that was a funny story to tell because it's like, what's going to happen when you're trying to record a podcast, right?
That's the beauty of like not doing it live though, is that there's no rush. I could pause it, wait 10 minutes, wait 2 hours. It doesn't matter. Let clean up the puke, get everything all set up. But no, that was funny. That was a memorable experience.
Yes. Well, I feel it's okay now to talk about it. Not that it was ever bad to talk about it, but the listeners didn't know at the time. Now they know and they're like, okay, that's funny.
Well, I mean, anyone that's had, because Thomas, you were talking about it earlier, and Kevin, you have your second now too. It's just like, it's whatever. I just have so much of a tolerance. I don't care. It's like, you have stuff that you want to use your kids as an excuse not to come over. I get it now. I've been there. It's the way life is, man.
Yep.
I use my dog right now as an excuse to not to go anywhere. So trust me, I'm going to use my child just the same.
That's what they're great about. I mean, you have that built-in, baked-in excuse, and Sophia also projectiles, but she's only a month old, so it's a little different. But she's up all hours of the night, so I'm running on adrenaline right now and anything else. But it did have a wild ending here with a lot of Chiefs fans booing, a lot of ref officiating calls going on right now. We had a 17 seconds and Mahomes got into field goal position to not bring up any bad memories, but pretty much just ran the same type of plays they did against the Bills to get in. No one learned, and they still kicked it through the end zone. I swear to God, that should have been learned previous. And then Mahomes got in, and now it's 20-10 Raiders over the Chiefs. So I guess teams don't. Yeah, at halftime. So I guess teams just don't really learn there. But I think what's interesting when it comes on the injury front is the Trey White scenario. He used an external doctor that seems to be like muddling this up a little bit based on what I've understood. And it seemed fairly long, doesn't it, Kyle? Like, I mean, you have J.K. Dobbins already playing who seemingly had a worse injury. Like, what's your opinion on what's going on with Trey? And I mean, they freed a roster spot. I don't know that it's for Trey White. I don't really have an idea where that would go. They have plenty of DTs on the practice squad with, a couple of guys in Eli Anku and Justin Zimmer. So I don't know that it's just automatically going to go to a DT when they're rostering a couple of vets. And And is there any value to active roster practicing? Because my opinion was put him on the active roster and maybe inactivate him if you have to. So that's kind of where I was at with him.
That's what I thought going in. That's what I thought they would do at the deadline for Pop. I was like, get him on the active roster and activate him for the first few weeks, get him up to speed, and then they didn't. And they even have that window to do that. So who knows what they're going to do with this whole roster spot open right now. And then using the external doctor, that's not uncommon. Guys do that all the time. I don't know. Like, that's what it seemed like they were blaming it on when he wasn't activated from Pop at the end of training camp, is that there was other stuff going on. But even if that was the case, like, there's still some type of disconnect there. Like, I don't know what the disconnect is, but there's still something going on that is, depending on what's going on with regards to the Bills, what they want to do versus what Trey White wants to do. That's the big difference there. And we don't know the how far off.
Do you think he wants to sit out longer? Do you think that's Trey? Do you think who's saying, like, what's your opinion on who's saying what? Do you think it's the Bills? Like, no. Do you think it's Trey saying, nah, I'm good, I want to wait till? But isn't that 14-day window start though, where you have to make a decision either to put him on the IR for good or put him in the 3-week window? I thought they only have 14 days, or already like half.
I've read that it was up to 5 weeks, like from the time that they had that. I've seen different things. I mean, our guy Sal Capaccio would probably know best on that stuff, but I've read that there's like a 5-week window from the initial time frame of when you're eligible to come off.
Because it's the 2 plus 3, right? The 5 weeks is the 2 plus the 3.
Yeah. So I think there's something like that, and then on top of that too, like. I mean, they have time to play with this here, but I don't think the Bills are holding back at this point. I think the Bills want to get back out there if they can, because hey, they're paying them money. They better get production out of them. So it comes down to Trey White doesn't want to be out there yet, or the doctor.
Whoa.
I think we lost Kyle.
Kyle dropped.
But you see this with Ronnie Stanley, in fairness, where he straight up didn't want to play football for
right.
He was fully practicing. He was like mentally, I'm not saying this is Trey, but mentally he wasn't there. He just obviously it was a rainy day against the Bills. He didn't want to get out there, but you kind of see some of that trepidation.
I think the one thing I question though is it that, or is it that we've seen such solid production from Dane Jackson, from Kyrie Elam, from Christian Benford, that has lent itself to, they don't feel like they told Trey, like, hey, listen, take the time you need, recover, get 100%. Don't worry about re-injuring yourself, because we want to make sure you're good to go in terms of because prior to, this season, I mean, you knew Dane Jackson was good. I mean, he was fine. He's a good filler. But you didn't know what Kyrie Elam or Christian Benford were. But now you know what they both are. And it really seems like Dane Jackson might be better than Levi Wallace. Like, he might be like a better number 2 or a CB2. So I think that might be what has lent itself to Trey not coming back as quickly, is that they felt like things are okay.
Yeah, you saw a couple things. If you're talking corner, that's what I kind of asked Kyle, where is it a Bills decision or a player decision? He made it seem like it could possibly be a player decision, which is interesting.
Right.
But to your point, could it be a team decision then on resting and rehabbing? It's very possible. When Sean McDermott answered that, could you use the bye before getting the players back, quote that he had today, I thought he was referring to Trey White, maybe Jordan Phillips. I don't really see anyone else that would pertain to. I do think Poyer might use that extra week. We have it on good regards. He should be okay. I have it on good regards that Dawson Knox should be okay. That the Bills, out of abundance of caution, held him out. Right decision. After all there, I was 50-50 on that decision. It seemed right. With what the Bills were able to do. So I think those guys will be ready to go. You might use it on Phillips, and then you definitely are probably going to use it on Trey White. But that's kind of what I took from the quote of, you will use that extra week here. I think that's pertaining to Trey White. I don't know that Dawson Knox would need 3 more weeks here to get ready. So I do think that was pertaining to Trey White. Should he be ready to go to the corner decision you were just talking about? Look, the Bills picked on Levi Wallace. Ken Dorsey wouldn't answer the question.
Go after him.
It was no. It's not. I'm sorry. It wasn't. I mean, Ken Dorsey's gone to the school of McDermott rather than the school of Bean, who will tell you anything. Almost. He went to the school of McDermott, who won't tell you anything. And Ken Dorsey blatantly was asked about Levi Wallace, and he said, "No, it's the way it happened." I'm pretty sure that's probably not the way it happened. He's a liability. I call it the Ryan Fitzpatrick game plan, to where back with those Fitz teams, he would target Levi Wallace at times because he was a liability in zone coverage. He was pretty bad. Beside his one decent pick, he was pretty bad yesterday all around in the game plan. And yes, I do believe Dane Jackson, even in the playoffs last year, Levi Wallace was the one getting picked on, not Dane Jackson. So I do believe that's an upgrade. We saw some problems from Kyer Elam. I'd like to see him close and react a little bit better than we saw yesterday. Definitely struggled in coverage. Luckily, it didn't matter really. Definitely had some bad moments, but we were expecting that from a corner who technically lost to Christian Benford. He technically did lose the battle to Christian Benford. So corner-wise, I still think that they would like to have Trey White back as soon as possible. You're going into a Chiefs week. And if one thing's true, the Bills fully believe in home field advantage being the reason that they weren't able to secure a victory. And this is a big step to that. Like, you need that tiebreaker. Right. You can't go as a 2 and 3 again. You know, putzing around 2, 3, maybe 4. That one's a huge deal to get the home field more than anything, of even the bye, is to be able to play all your games at home. Like Mahomes has been able to do his entire career, guys. So I do believe Trey White this week was probably the expectation. Now, Kyle might have better insight. I'm not sure where it's gone wrong, but I did clarify just by looking some stuff up. The Bills only have 1 week left to make a decision to activate him to the 3-week mark. So it's a strange thing, but they do need to bring him back to the active practice roster in the next week. And then they have 3 more. They buy 3 more weeks. So I'd expect to see that here shortly, because otherwise it ends his season. So effectively it is 5 weeks, but the Bills do need to say, yes, we will exercise that 3 weeks rather than put him on IR. But they will have to make an official transaction in the next 7 days from today.
Well, good information. I'm glad I came back for that.
There we go.
All right.
Well, Kyle, you got anything else for us?
Nope, that's it. My computer died for a second. I'm glad I got back on it so quickly, though. But technology.
And sorry, Nate, we'll bounce it over to him to see if he's got anything for Kyle.
Yeah. You might have mentioned this earlier, Kyle, but did you say you expected Tremaine Edmonds to come back this next week from that hamstring injury?
I did not mention him, but that's a good question. The fact that he was questionable despite not practicing and during the week suggests that he might be. He played in all 100% of snaps in week 4. Didn't practice at all during the lead up to the Steelers game. Kept him out, which I thought was the right move. I would expect him to play in week 6. Might see some limited practice as they ramp him back up, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't play. I mean, he's been a big monster in the middle of the season along with Matt Milano. So not having Edmonds there in week 6 would be a real big loss.
Is it encouraging they took him to kickoff, basically? Like, usually he'll rule him out.
Yeah, they pretty much did. I think they just waited. They wrote him questionable, and then they took it up till when they had to announce the inactives.
It's an interesting decision.
I will say Dodson did fantastic in replacement effort. So I think Dodson's nice. I think that his coverage is great. His ability to diagnose plays might be on par with Tremaine. He did a nice job yesterday. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Tremaine does. Obviously, that hamstring's another one where it's just you don't want Tremaine out for multiple weeks.
Do you expect to see the full playoff week 6 roster, or do you think the Bills play it long term, knowing with a bye behind it? Do you play? Yes, McDermott said he'll take the extra week. I still think that's pertaining to Trey White, obviously. Do you think that they're going to play these injuries through, like with knowing that it's what they say, whatever they want? This is a very important regular season game.
I think they get whoever out there that they can, but they're not going to risk somebody get out there if they think that they're going to be better, when they play them in the playoffs.
Like a long-term one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to Kevin's point, I think that if there is a decision where it's like 50-50, I think they lean more towards playing them for that reason. You mentioned with the playoff seeding being so important. The number 1 seed in the AFC has never been more important than it is right now. And having that head-to-head tiebreaker over the Chiefs, which you only get one shot at, it's not a divisional game. You only get one shot at it. I say that if there is one and they're leaning more one way or the other, I think that they have maybe a soft tissue, maybe like a Jordan Phillips, maybe like a Tremaine Edmonds in this case, like play as opposed to not playing just to be safe. At least that's that. After our discussion, after you mentioned that, it just feels like that sort of way for Sean McDermott.
Right.
They do a lot of things that confuse me. So at least this season, I mean, I feel like I got a pretty good pulse on what they do, but they've been doing some things that have been counter to what they've historically done. So it's always a interesting time to figure out what they're doing based off what we're seeing this season.
They've built rosters. They even drafted a player in Terrell Bernard to beat the Chiefs. Obviously, Bernard's been behind Dodson on the depth chart. You can question how important that need really was for the Bills, but they went ahead and did it. I think mainly with the Chiefs in mind. So it would kind of go against what they're saying to not play anyone that's even semi-close. And even Jordan Phillips is kind of against that. Realistically, as conservative they are, you would have thought he would have sat. But they needed active game day roster spots. And they said, we can't keep rostering Brandon Bryant. We can't keep rostering, Eli Anku or anybody else. Like we need the call-up spots with other players, a linebacker and others. And we need the active roster spots with a DB and a wide receiver. We don't have the spots to keep being the defensive tackle. So at some point we got to play someone through it. And I think you see that decision this week too, with, knowing that Tremaine might have an extra week to rehab it off of this. I kind of look at it like they're able to rehab some of these people and give Trey White a little bit more time. And maybe you probably won't see Jordan Phillips. But other than that, I really expect to see the majority of the roster here in a pretty big game, Kyle.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you there.
So Trey White's the interesting one. We'll have to stay tuned on his saga. There hasn't been a lot out of it. So that, I don't know. No news is usually good news, but we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. So nice tidbit about the 2 week and then 3 week thing there. So I knew that existed, but
it should just be 5. But 2 weeks is just you have 2 weeks to put him on the 3. It's super weird. Like I guess you could say in these 2 weeks, like he's going on IR. I guess you could do that anytime, anyways. But you have to say within 2 weeks he will be back within the next 3 weeks. So I'm assuming the Bills say that because even if he's not, they'll then IR him anyways after the 3 weeks. So I'd expect to see him off of the PUP list here shortly. And I don't believe the 3 week will count against the active roster when they're on.
No, because they have that time frame. Then if they can put him back on there, so
yeah, for sure.
Right. Well, Kyle, I kept you quite long tonight, in fact, but definitely appreciate you as always. And if you want to find any of Kyle's fantastic content, check out bangedupbills.com, Banged Up Bills on Twitter. He also writes for Buffalo Rumblings, for myself here at Buffalo Late Night, Cover One, Locked On Bills. He's really everywhere. Anywhere you want injury updates, Kyle's your guy. So, Kyle, as always, we appreciate you, and we will see you next
Great seeing you, Kyle.
Great seeing you guys. Have a good night.
You too. Have a good night.
Go Bills.
Night, Kyle.
That being said, about injuries, obviously part of being injured is getting healthy, and part of being healthy is making sure you take care of yourself. And that starts with the best possible dentist when you're a kid. And the best dentist for anybody is the dentist that I always suggest, and that's a dentist for kids. My bruz, my guy, Dr. Zach Mills. Dr. Zach Mills and a dentist for kids offers individual dental treatment for kids of all ages by providing a relaxed, fun, and encouraging environment. Dr. Zach's goal is to help your child build confidence in their smile and with their overall dental health. A dentist for kids is currently accepting new patients, and they participate with most major insurances. If you visit Dr. Zach, mention Buffalo Late Night for $25 off your choice of a custom whitening kit or an electric toothbrush. Who doesn't want an electric toothbrush? So much easier. Call today to set up an appointment with Dr. Zach and his team, 585-538-7230. And if you go to bflolatenight.com, you'll see their logo right there. Click on it. It'll take you right to their page. Good stuff. The best in the business. Seriously, go check them out. That being said, the big news today was the back and forth of information regarding the Bills' alleged or potentially alleged connection with Christian McCaffrey and the Carolina Panthers. This all coming after the Panthers fired Matt Rule earlier today. Buy or sell, Kevin, Nate, do the Bills try and pry CMC away from the Panthers? Do they get him?
I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. I do believe Bean reaches out to plenty of people. He did say on a recent podcast, well, it's been years, probably before the Josh Allen rebirth, that he was his favorite draft pick of all time was Christian McCaffrey. He said on one of his exclusive interviews on many podcasts that he goes on. I truly believe in that. I do believe that James Cook, it was inspired by Christian McCaffrey. I do believe that's the kind of player that they're looking for, to be able to catch out of the backfield. He's had a slow rebirth. You kind of saw him late in the game against the Steelers. Not sure what that means, but he still is kind of tentative, and he still is kind of slow in the backfield. But, to be fair, Zach Moss doesn't look any better. And really only Devin Singletary's ability after the tackle has what's worked out for the Bills. But I do think that if it happens, I do believe Christian McCaffrey would be an interesting party. And I think it would take a player like James Cook going back. You're not going to just get nothing for nothing. They would only cost $500 to $750K against the cap this year, the way it's structured. So the salary makes sense. Anybody that says the money, Bills are going to mortgage the future, untrue. That's completely false. It wouldn't really hurt them too bad. And then they'd also have a 3-year, $36 million option for the next 3 years if they'd like to pay him $12 a year, or they could let him go with no charge at all to their cap. So I think that the salary makes sense this year. The player they were looking for in J.D. McKissic, you're going to get in a Christian McCaffrey plus the ability to run the ball. So I think that all of those things combined would equal, Christian McCaffrey's used to playing on teams, bad teams, where he's the focal point, where he's being keyed in on with the Bills passing game the way that it is. Christian McCaffrey would be a huge add to the Bills roster. To me, it would come at the expense of like a James Cook and probably a 3rd-round pick. So I think that that's fairly affordable for a team that's looking at the future. The Rams traded a 2nd and a 3rd for Von Miller for half of a season of Von Miller. And to me, that just might be valuable enough to have to part with a mid-round pick and James Cook in order to get a guy that is 26, so who should be able to play longer than this year, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, you basically sold me on it, especially with knowing the salary ramifications that are for Christian McCaffrey this year. I mean, he's basically a rental player. If you're getting him this season, you're going to rent him for this Super Bowl, or what we hope is a Super Bowl run for the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, if you're telling me James Cook and a 2nd or hopefully a 3rd, I mean, I'm making that trade for a guy that, I mean, the Bills' leading rusher right now, Devin Singletary, what does he get? Maybe 6-7 rushes a game. Okay, give, Christian McCaffrey 10 or 12, 14 touches a game or whatever. You're talking a huge upgrade over what I think, in my opinion, is they have a really good, solid stable of running backs. I mean, this just puts them over the edge. It saves Christian McCaffrey for, the rest of the season, where he doesn't have to put the entire, team and offense on his back like he has to in Carolina. For all intents and purposes, I believe he's healthy at the moment. So I think that this would be a good move. I mean, Brandon Beane, the good thing about having Brandon Beane as one of the good things I should say about having Brandon Beane as your GM is that he kicks the tires on almost everyone, it feels like. And, sometimes he actually does pull the trigger. And, Kevin mentioning that, Christian McCaffrey was one of his favorite picks. It feels like they've been trying to find a Christian McCaffrey ever since, Brandon Beane has come here. They just haven't been able to find, and there's just not that many Christian McCaffreys out there, to be honest. Like, there just isn't. I would love the move as long as we're not giving up too much draft capital for a 1-year player, and a 2nd or 3rd. I mean, 3rd sounds, James Cook and a 3rd, do it all day long. I mean, you look at the depth chart past this year. If you're not looking past this year, all you really have is Zach Moss, under contract for the Buffalo Bills in 2023, but whatever. I mean, you can find undrafted guys. We found Raheem Blackshear. You can find these guys undrafted. You can draft another guy next year with a mid-round pick. I'm not too worried about that, but you can't help but think like how much more of a dynamic. I mean, we were just talking about injuries. I mean, the Bills lost 2 of their slot receivers, this last week in Jameson Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie, and it didn't matter. They might have gotten better because of it. So Josh Allen is that good. He makes everyone around him better. And I mean, I don't know if it'll happen, but I would love to see it happen.
I'll say this, and it's a 2-parter. One, Ben Albright, who it might be one of the best in the business, and prototypically when he says something, it's generally speaking pretty close to the truth. He said if there's any team that he would see Christian McCaffrey going to, it is the Bills, and I tend to believe what Ben says. Aside from that, Christian McCaffrey just makes sense. Aside from what you said, Kevin, about the connection with Brandon Beane, stylistically with the Bills offense, the flexibility that he provides this offense I mean, aside from just lining up as a running back, you can run 20 personnel, you can run 22 personnel, you can run 21 personnel. You can have him. I mean, he might become your best slot receiver, and then it allows you to really take your time with Khalil Shakir, because prior, that was the plan. That was the plan with Khalil Shakir, is to bring him up and, kind of bring him up to speed in a slower fashion. But with the loss of Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder, it kind of just catapulted him into that wide receiver 3. You get if you get Christian McCaffrey, that's like your slot receiver right there. He can do things that most people can't do. He is very, very much one of the most dynamic NFL players when he's healthy. And I did like what a lot of people were saying, like Greg Thompson said this earlier, and he was mentioning Dr. Kyle Trimble, who we had earlier, obviously. He's not that injured. There's this weird narrative about Christian McCaffrey that he is just always injured, and he's not. If you look at him in his 9 years of playing football back at Stanford and then in the NFL, I think it's 6 out of his 9 seasons, he hasn't missed a game. He's just had fluky injuries that have derailed a couple seasons on him and made him really got put into a tough spot. So that being said, I've said this before, I said this with Odell Beckham Jr., really with anybody they want to bring in. No one's going to care. No one will give a shit 20 years down the road when that Lombardi trophy is sitting in the trophy case at One Bills Drive, whether you brought Christian McCaffrey in and traded a 3rd round pick. No one's going to care. All they're going to care about is we can finally say that we're world champions and that we're Super Bowl champions. That's all that matters. So if that is in fact another step of getting them over that edge, do it. Do it. And don't even think anything. Don't think twice about it. Don't think beyond it. Just do it. Because you know what? Your legacy is defined by the winning in the championships you bring back. You win this year, all the commentary that has come from before, that Josh Allen can't finish, that the Bills have this roster, but they can't win in the big games, doesn't matter anymore. Just do it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I like what you said about, no one really caring after the season, because do you think Rams fans are upset that they gave up a 2nd and a 3rd rounder for Von Miller? Like you mentioned, no one cares. They see that trophy that's hanging up in their stadium, and that's all they care about, and that's all I would care about. I wouldn't care if we got rid of half the offensive line if the Bills win a Super Bowl. I don't care. I just want to see the Bills win a Super Bowl. And I think one of the big questions is, though, and I'm curious what you guys think about it, is what is too much to give up for that? Because we already mentioned James Cook. We have to send him a running back in exchange. I get that, but what is too much to give up? Draft potential, because I don't want to give up a 1st round pick. I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of like, Gollum, right? In the Lord of the Rings, like with my 1st round picks, like I don't like to give them up for anything unless it's like a guy, like it's a perfect situation like Stephon Diggs, where he was already currently undervalued. He was like another 5 years left on his contract. Like, yeah, let's do it. But for a rental player like this, 3rd round pick sounds great. I liked when Kevin said that. 2nd round pick was where it gets a little too much for me. Maybe I'd give a 3rd and a 4th, as opposed to just a 2nd. I'm curious where you guys come out on this, because I'm not really sure exactly how much I'd be willing to give up. Whereas, if Brandon Beane did it and he's like, well, it's a rental player, I gave up James Cook in a 1st, I'd be like, ooh, might be a little too rich for my blood. What about you, Kevin?
I think you'll start to see where if it happened, where Brandon Beane values the player. I think that you have somebody like James Cook going back on purpose. He's young. He would be a replacement for the player. He's under contract. I do believe that the Panthers would value that. I do believe that holds value. That's not a toss in. Like, unfortunately, to the Panthers, maybe not to the Bills, Devin Singletary would be a toss in almost. Now, he's the best running back in the room. However, doesn't have a ton of value to the Panthers on a contract year. So he would be out, even though the Bills probably on a contract year would want to move him, because they would say, we're probably not signing him. We'd like to move him back. He's the best player. We think he should have the most value. But I think James Cook brings in a lot of draft capital value and is probably a non-starter for the Bills if they don't value a player that the Bills could return. Now, could it be from a different position group? I guess the Panthers could pluck somebody else and say, hey, you guys are pretty deep in this room. Would you be interested in moving XYZ player? But I do believe the Bills would prefer to trade James Cook. Zach Moss doesn't have a ton of value at all. To me, though, the Bills struggle in the second round. That's one of Brandon Beane's biggest struggled rounds. He's very good in the late rounds. He's been fairly good in the first round. He's been nailing third round for the most part. For some reason, he overthinks the second round a little bit. Some of his biggest draft busts in Cody Ford, come in the second round, reach in a faller in AJ Epinesa. He's been okay. He's shown some flashes. You'd like to see a little bit more production. So, the second round has been a challenge. James Cook himself. So the second round has been a challenge for the Bills a little bit based on need to value to future need. So I think that the second round is applicable. But if you see second round in James Cook, yes, it's a little bit rich. I think that value is about max and about right. But the biggest thing about the second is I think that shows you that it's not a rental at that point. The Bills will find ways to keep a 26-year-old Christian McCaffrey, who the Bills have the option. He's actually signed 3 for 36, very similar to the Diggs scenario, who at the time, I thought a first and a 4 and 2 future picks. I thought that was expensive at the time for a guy that wanted out of Minnesota. Everyone in Minnesota is telling me he's going to come and suck and he's going to hate Josh Allen and all of these things that were wrong. But I thought that was rich for a player who basically tweeted he wanted out. And the Bills went and said, no, we're going to pay him maximum draft capital to get him here. I think you see the same in Christian McCaffrey, where they'd come in. Salary cap coupons are easy to come by. A $12 million base salary can get converted to a future bonus and extended fairly easily. All you're doing is committing that the 26-year-old player, you're probably going to keep till 30, 31. And I think that they feel fairly comfortable with that in the system, but you're just moving money down and they're able to structure it very, very strongly while the cap keeps going up. So to me, it'll tell you real quickly if it's a third or a fourth in a player, that's a rental. If it's a second in a player, the Bills deem to have Christian McCaffrey on the roster beyond just the 8 games that you'll see fit. I do want him in the offense. I want him in the offense. If you're going to make that move, especially with draft capital, I want him in the offense during the bye week. I don't want to wait till November 1st. That to me is worth it. As you move out and out, that becomes a rental, and that becomes sorry guys. You've dragged your feet. Third and a fourth is max what we're going to do here. Whereas if you see them go out and get him at the trade deadline, and the Bills have said to want Von Miller at the trade deadline. They've been said to want Emmanuel Sanders at the trade deadline a few years ago. They've been said to want Stephon Diggs the year prior at the trade deadline. So Brandon Beane's very active. He's not going to overspend, but he's going to want him before the trade deadline in this case to get him in the offense, to get him in by the bye week. And I sternly believe the value will tell you what you think of Christian McCaffrey. If they pay a lot, that's not a rental any longer. The Bills have plans to keep him on the books.
I think the other part about that, Kevin, which is going to be intriguing, is how they perceive Christian McCaffrey beyond his value. Because Christian McCaffrey is not your just prototypical running back. He's more of a receiving back, which it may lend itself to the Bills' favor, that they might feel that they can give a little bit more in compensation because he might be able to last longer, or they can look at him as more of a slot receiver than as like a running back, because they don't value running backs. They just truly don't. And yes, they've drafted running backs, but that kind of tells you that they've done it so they don't have to re-up a running back. So it'll be intriguing, because if you look at Christian McCaffrey, I personally see him as more of a receiving back than a running back. So if that's what they see him as, that might benefit the Bills more than the alternative. Though I do like your thought process in keeping or in trading for him and then keeping him long-term based on how they're valuing him. But I do like Kevin was saying, I think it's going to be interesting. But Brandon Beane has a propensity for being very aggressive. It's been proven. He does it all the time. You saw it with Josh Allen when he traded up to get Josh Allen. Right. Yeah. And he's done a lot of really, really, very smart moves thus far. So I trust, I trust him implicitly. Every Bills fan should. There's no reason not to. So if he trades for CMC and that's the other part about this. There's a reason why, if he's going to do it, he's done his homework. He knows all about Christian McCaffrey. He, spent a lot of time, at the combine and sending scouts out after him. So he's very, very familiar with the guy. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, the other part about it is Joe Brady is now with Buffalo, and Joe Brady last year was with the Panthers. So Joe Brady is also familiar with Christian McCaffrey. So there is quite a bit of familiarity in the Bills locker room and the Bills front office. So I think it's a win-win if you want to do it. It just depends on what that compensation
comes from football bloodlines. There's just zero interest. There's zero ways the Bills wouldn't be interested. There is a cap probably on the compensation, but I do believe it's a win now. The player, the need, it all works out, unfortunately. Even if you're not a big Christian McCaffrey fan, Greg Thompson's already broken down some of the injury things are overblown. He plays generically pretty much the entire season usually. So I think that he would be an excellent addition. And what the Panthers tried to do, or what they did with him early on, he's a dual slot receiver in terms of having a slot on the field so that you have a DB on the field to cover the slot, and then he goes in the slot in 14 personnel or in another situation to where, depending on how it's broken down, the Bills are going to run a very unique offense with him in it. And that's what I think that Ken Dorsey would love to see. So you play him in a very strategic role with multiple running backs on the field and multiple tight ends on the field, and in situations to where there's not a DB covering him, however they can get that to happen, and even have Khalil Shakir on the field. I'm a proponent of playing players early. I think that's how they learn. Quarterback's a little hairy, but outside of that, I do believe young players should play and play a lot. And I want Shakir to play. Crowder's snaps going away from Shakir, as we saw in the preseason, was the wrong move, in my opinion. I didn't think we saw a lot out of Crowder. I thought we saw some of those drops early on in games that weren't important, and I thought that was going to translate, and it did a little bit. And talk about a guy always hurt. He's always been hurt in his Jets career, even in his Washington career. To me, I do believe that you'll see Christian McCaffrey in this situation take some of those. But Khalil Shakir needs to be a mainstay in the lineup. And he just, as a 6-foot receiver, has a 9 RAS score, checks every box, can route run. He isn't your typical rookie receiver. He has shown flashes to be paired with Gabe Davis. I think, to me, he should be your slot receiver going forward. I don't believe there should be much discussion outside of Isaiah McKenzie packages. I think that he should be your slot receiver. And then you can do things with Christian McCaffrey and Khalil Shakir and Isaiah McKenzie. That's where Ken Dorsey's going to get multiple. And those are situations that I'm looking forward to in 10 personnel. So you can go the other way and have all receivers. You can go one way and have all running backs on the field, which is what I think could happen with Reggie Gilliam. You could have Devin Singletary on the field, and you can bring Christian McCaffrey, and you have no idea how to cover that. So to me, it's too exciting. The Bills are here to win now. We don't want to think about the teams that, what if, guys? We don't want to play this what if game. We want some of the best teams. The Bills already have some of the best teams ever to not win. We don't need more of those. We need to win now, and we need to sacrifice some of those future picks in order to do so. It's just that simple. Brandon Beane does well enough in years, even in the years that he didn't have draft picks. He's still getting guys like Gabe Davis and others in those years where he didn't have a first-round pick from Stephon Diggs. So to me, they'll get it done drafting Khalil Shakirs of the world. I need right now a premier player that can change the game for the Bills offense and help them take some pressure off of Josh Allen. And you never know when you need one of those running games like you saw against New England last year with the win game, and maybe in the playoffs this year. I think it's a no-brainer, and I don't think there's any scenario the Bills shouldn't consider it outside of astronomical prices.
It's funny you say that, because actually one of my topics tonight was, has Khalil Shakir earned a starting role? So thank you for answering that question. I agree. Nate, I'm pretty sure you're probably going to be synonymous.
Yeah, I mean, for everything that you and Kevin have mentioned, I don't think it's. I know the Steelers don't have a great defense. I know their secondary was banged up, but it's also not a surprise that I think that one of the best games this season that Josh Allen has had passing the ball was because Khalil Shakir was on the field. And I thought he looked tremendous, minus that one drop, just whatever, a mistake. I thought he looked tremendous, and I thought he's looked, and I'm an Isaiah McKenzie fan. I like him when they've actually featured him, in the lineup. But to say that Khalil Shakir hasn't shown, he looked great in training camp. He looked great in the preseason. This isn't new. I mean, it's just continued on. And like Kevin said, McDermott likes to move his rookies around really slowly. He doesn't like them to get too many reps in the season. He likes to, and I get that, but there are some players like a Matt Milano. You need to get him on the field because he's better than the guy ahead of you. He's better than Ramon Humber. And in this scenario, like Khalil Shakir, we've been seeing it all preseason. We see it now. We have actual season, we've seen it on film during the season. He is better than Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie. I still like those two players. They're great depth options at this point, but he just needs to be getting more snaps. He needs to never be made inactive at any point during the season. And I love what I've seen from him. He is as advertised, because sometimes the Bills will pick someone in the middle rounds and then be like, oh, this guy's he fell to, and then nothing ever happens, right? Khalil Shakir has not been that case so far. He is as advertised, and he was the exciting pick that everyone in the NFL, the draft pundits, thought was a steal in the 5th round. turning out to be that way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I liked what Bruce Nolan said. How the rest of the league allowed the Buffalo Bills to get Khalil Shakir in the 5th is beyond us. So he's very, very talented. It's, you looked good in college. The one thing that they said, his report coming out was makes incredible catches, drops dumb catches. And that's what you saw. Just one of those catches that he should have had, and he won't make that mistake twice. He said he kicked himself because that should have been a ball that he caught all day long. That being said, we're going to move on to our weekly segment. It is our damn segment. So Ian, go ahead, kick it.
Damn.
This week's damn segment is dedicated to NFL official Jerome Boger, Mr. Hoding himself. After one of the most stunningly terrible calls in the last 5 weeks of football, potentially all time, his officiating crew seemed to think that what can be best described here as lovable roughhousing constituted a roughing the passer call. Whereas there has been multiple instances of chippy play this week alone, somehow what should have been another sack to Grady Jarrett's stat line arguably ended Atlanta's chances of taking home the W against Tampa Bay. While the Falcons were on their way to mounting a 21-point comeback against the Bucs, with 3 minutes and 3 seconds left in the game, Atlanta's offense ready to take the field with another chance to score. The penalty on third down handed Tampa Bay a free set of downs and the ability to stomp out Atlanta's comeback. So congratulations to Jerome Boger, this week's recipient of the Damn Award. What a dumb decision.
That being said, let's move. This game, guys. They just had a similar play in this game that's going to get talked about. Just like the Brady one. Yeah, Derek Carr got a call that was very similar, almost identical to that play with Brady. So definitely going to be a topic of conversation. And there were some interesting stats that Brady actually doesn't get a lot of those calls. Did you know that? There's been a lot of recent stats that he's actually toward the bottom. Josh Allen's toward the top. He's actually toward the bottom of the list. So Josh Allen doesn't get holdings and pass interferences, but he is at the top of the list for roughing the passers. Brady's the opposite. He gets a lot of holdings and pass interferences. He's really toward the bottom of getting that call. So definitely an interesting point of contention there, especially here with the Derek Carr play as the Chiefs came roaring back to take a 4-point 24-20 lead here after scoring 21-3 in points here in the last 15 minutes.
But not only that, it wasn't just the fact that it was a terrible call, that it wasn't truly roughing the passer. In my opinion, looking at it multiple times in instant replay. Oh, is this the one?
Yep, this is the call.
Yep.
And I think it's a fumble too, right? Yeah, it's a fumble. The Chiefs recover.
No, that's not Chris Jones.
Terrible call. I think it is, isn't it? 95, Chris Jones?
Is Chris Jones 95? I thought Chris Jones was 91.
Yeah, 95 is Chris Jones. Derek Nandi is 91.
Oh, it is? Okay.
So good play. They actually turned the sack fumble. The Raiders only get 3 out of that play, but since then, the 13 seconds happened before halftime, 17 seconds in this case, and the Chiefs have now scored 17 unanswered. So
yeah, the Raiders are garbage anyway, so it's not.
They're pretty bad defensively. Yeah, they're really bad defensively.
But what was crazy about that play? The fact that no, it's okay. Was just that. Like Brady tried to kick him coming up. Grady Jarrett, like he tried to literally like kick him. I don't know if you can bring that replay up again for folks to see, but it's just like it was a blatant like I didn't like what you did to me. I'm gonna try to kick you, which should have been a foul in itself. It should have been, if anything, I don't know, offsetting or whatever. Like here you go. You see him as he's trying to get up. Look at that. Look at that play. Like it's such a dirty. I don't know. The only time. Yeah.
Do we know what Epinesa did? By the way, I still haven't seen it.
It was something to do with Hussey. I guess I don't know if he touched or bumped into Hussey, but I guess there's somebody had posted. I don't know. I mean, who knows? It's all just rumor mill, but that Hussey might get in trouble. So who knows? It's
outside of a deliberate, like forceful push or punch or something. Like, I don't know, man. You're in the middle of a scrum where the player took a cheap shot. I don't know. Like, you might get pushed. Like, I don't know. Right. Unless it's deliberate or clearly to the official. I mean, it's just kind of par for the course.
Sometimes I think the referees are somehow like they there's a lot of ego there with those guys, and them getting bumped like, oh, you think you could just do that to me? Like there's a little bit of that sort of attitude towards something like that. Like you can't just do that, like ejection. I don't know.
If he's clearly mad at Kenny Pickett, that shouldn't be the same as like I'm mad at the ref. I'm going to punch or push or kick the ref.
Exactly.
That's different than me clearly being mad at Kenny Pickett. Like you might have gotten away by accident. Like I don't know.
Yeah, coming in at the end of a scrum as opposed to like getting between Epinesa and Pickett, and then Epinesa throws a punch through Hussey too. Yeah, here it is.
He
turned around and he smacked him. That's why he didn't.
He kind of body pushed him.
Well, it looked like he had his arm around. He didn't know that wasn't a Steelers player grabbing him though. Yeah, that guy's definitely a red ass. Like you could just tell.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I mean, that's not a
no.
I don't know.
That being said, let's jump right into it. Before we do that, Travis Matthews Innovative Fabrics keep you looking and feeling your best, whether you are on the golf course or strolling through town, offering supreme comfort for every aspect of your life with clothing that's quick drying, wrinkle resistant, and super soft. You can move seamlessly from work to play. Get 20% off your order and free shipping at travismatthew.com. You'll find the link right on Buffalo Late Night's social media pages, including our website, bflolatenight.com. You'll see that right at the bottom of the stream right there. Finally, let's talk about the big matchup coming this Sunday against one of our fiercest opponents and seemingly potentially our AFC Championship opponent coming up, the Kansas City Chiefs. What are your keys for the Bills to win this game, and what is your prediction?
Go ahead, Nate. You can
off. I've been reading up on I don't follow the Chiefs religiously. I'll be honest. I couldn't name number 91 like Kevin is. Kevin's a whiz with those sorts of things. That's why I'm glad you have him on. But it was, I've been reading about Orlando Brown, left tackle Orlando Brown, and his struggles that he's had in pass protection so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed a little bit of it in tonight's game. There was a 3rd and 4 where Mahomes just had to get the ball out because he just got blown off the line. I forget who the pass rusher is. Is it Max Crosby? I can't remember, but ended up getting around the edge and like Mahomes had no time. So I think the Bills, getting pressure, hopefully a Von Miller on that side, if not a Greg Rousseau, getting pressure off the edge, something that they weren't able to get last year in the AFC divisional playoff game. And if you think about it, the Bills had an amazing game offensively in scoring 42 points, but they were 38 points, rather, whatever it ended up being. They weren't able to stop Mahomes at all and get any pressure on him whatsoever. I don't think that'll be the case this year. I think that they'll be able to get pressure on him. It's just a matter of can they get some of those guys back in the secondary. Hopefully Benford comes back, but if not, Tremaine Edmonds obviously helps their pass coverage across the middle because the Chiefs have been utilizing all of their tight ends as of late. It's just, I think the Bills on offense are unstoppable. And the weakness in this Chiefs defense is defending the pass. So I think that the Bills can take advantage of it. You've already seen Derek Carr take advantage of some of those, younger Kansas City defensive backs. I can't remember exactly what the name. I think it's Watson is the 7th round rookie who's starting now because I think Trent McDuffie is out of the lineup right now. So I think that they can start picking on him. I mean, the Bills just have the horses that it's hard to keep up with on the Kansas City side of the ball. So I think the key will just be, consistent pass rush, specifically against Orlando Brown, hopefully through the middle with Ed Oliver, obviously, or potentially Jordan Phillips. And I think, being able to continue to pass the ball like they have been for the better part of the season and just continuing to, rack up points and yardage against those Kansas City DBs.
Yeah, It's a good start there, Nate. I think that their defense is horrible. They just allowed a 40-yard Jacobs run up the seam. They're struggling immensely. Some of their better players might be like L'Jarius Sneed's been good for them. One of the best blitzers in the league. He's really good in run defense, average coverage guy, but is top 10 corner per PFF. Rashad Fenton is always run of the mill. He gets it done sometimes, struggles in others. Trent McDuffie's on IR. Watson, their 7th round pick, is playing average to poor, but that's okay. The Bills are playing a 6th round pick at times in Benford. So, the safety play in Juan Thornhill hasn't been very good. Justin Reed's been okay, not his dominant self. Willie Gay's suspended. You have Nick Bolton, who's played okay at the linebacker position. No defensive lineman except Chris Jones. The rest of them have been poor. Chris Jones has been his normal self as a top player on PFF, but the rest of their D-line's been terrible. So not a lot to like on that defense. And offensively, it's Mahomes' show. It's like the Lamar Jackson game all over again. Without Tyreek Hill, it's a different offense. I think they're vulnerable. They lost to a pretty bad Colts team. I think the Bills lost with backups and in the heat and in many scenarios. And the Chiefs don't really have that to say. They lost to a pretty poor Colts roster. The receiving room has not worked out, and Mecole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS just has not been very good. The running room hasn't been good. You have occasional flashes from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. To me, their interior line's very good. Some of the better interior offensive linemen in the league, but their tackle play, like you said, has been horrid. So really good on the interior. Would expect to slow down Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips. Some of the interior rushers as their guards and center play has been top-notch this season, but their tackle play has not. This is why you signed Von Miller. This is the game where Brandon Beane has said himself, we need to rush the passer. This is what you're going to do. You're going to rush 4, 0 blitzes, and drop 7. And this is going to be your game plan. You're very good at it. You struggled in the playoffs last year. You were very good in the regular season against them. Very bad. But that was because they didn't really adjust to life after Trey White. Levi Wallace was a liability. The linebacker play isn't as good as it's been this season. And the pass rush is immensely better this year for the Bills, with mostly statistics would prove that. So this right now would be a very interesting matchup. I have the Bills going in and winning 27-20. I think that the defense will show up at times. I don't believe you'll see the barn burner touchdown on every play. You've seen the Chiefs struggle today. You've seen them struggle this season at times. And I think that they'll do enough. They do enough to kind of look at Josh Allen's first half against, and even into the third quarter. Josh Allen was dominant for a third of the game. Prior to that, he struggled at times, and the Chiefs did do enough in the first part of the game to where they weren't moving the ball before the long Gabe Davis touchdown last year. There was times when I was like, are they like, they need to do more offensively, and they did figure it out. And then they didn't figure it out defensively. So I think the Bills will figure it out defensively, depending on who's available against the Chiefs. And there won't be moments of them scoring 40 points. I don't believe necessarily. I do believe that Reed has a decent game plan against him at times, but that also didn't show up in the third of the game last year. So I got a 27-20 win. I think that that's about what I've been expecting. I don't believe it's going to hit the over. The Bills are favored by 1 right now. And I think that the Chiefs have enough struggles as the Raiders just hit a field goal to make it 24-23 with 14 minutes left. So interesting. Would you rather have them off a win or a loss, Thomas? That's the biggest question. I don't care.
Right. First things first, if you are watching, go ahead. Hit that subscribe button. We truly appreciate it here, Buffalo Late Night. Aside from that, this is a game that that earmarked. I know Josh Allen every single week. He's PR genius. He's PR trained. It's 1-0 every week. They look at this game. This is one of the games that that they are thinking about, and they built their team to beat the Chiefs. They've done certain things to be able to play against the Chiefs and beat the Chiefs. They brought Von Miller in to beat the Chiefs. Like that was why they didn't. They wanted to be able to sack Patrick Mahomes. They did that. This is important to them. This is important to their legacy. This is another one of those games that Josh Allen, whether he can't play on prime time or whether he can't close out games or whether he can't win a 1-possession game, right? All those things that they have naysayers on. This is one of those ones, that when it comes to the Chiefs, they can't beat the Chiefs. Josh Allen hears the noise. He's on Twitter. He's on social media. He reads all this stuff. This is a game that they want. And not only do they want it for just the fact of like being able to say like they did it, they want it because that number 1 seed is something they talk implicitly about. the best way to win or to make the playoffs, win your division. The best way to get, into the Super Bowl, get the number 1 seed. You do those two things, you got a pretty easy track. And this is one of those games you have to win, bar none.
Yeah, I agree.
To your question, whether I care if they win or lose this, I'd love for them to lose it. Every loss is a loss. We'll figure it out next week. Let them lose and go on from there. I would love for the Raiders to beat them, because you know what? That just makes that division even more of a cluster. And that's what you want. You want every division to be an absolute mess. You want the Bills to have the easiest possible route. And that's what we said going into this was we want the AFC West to eat each other alive to make the Bills' chances to get to that number 1 seed a lot easier. You have the Chiefs lose this game. That's another possibility for the Bills getting to that number 1 seed easier. We've already seen all the other divisions in the NFL at this point are really in the AFC are bad. The AFC South is bad. The AFC North is not really all that strong. The Bengals don't look great. The Browns don't look great. The Steelers are a mess, and the Ravens are beatable. And then like I said, with the West, I don't know what's going on with the Broncos. They're a hot mess. The Chargers are up and down. The Raiders are a dumpster fire, and the Chiefs, I think, are beatable. So again, you have the Chiefs lose today, you beat them next week. It's another step in the right direction.
And you beat the best team in the South by 35. So
exactly.
There shouldn't be any issues with that.
I think the Bills are going to win by at least 14 against the Chiefs next week. I don't think Josh Allen's scared anymore about going into Arrowhead. Not that he ever was, but there is something to be said. Arrowhead is a very loud stadium. They're one of the best at it. I think he goes in there and he puts another statement win. I think, like Nate said, I think there's something to be said for Khalil Shakir and what he did and what kind of presence of mind he brings to Josh Allen, because that's the biggest thing. You notice when Cole Beasley was on the field, Josh Allen settled down. When he wasn't on the field, Josh Allen was erratic. If Khalil Shakir can be that Cole Beasley presence that he knows he's got a guy he can turn to when all else fails, that's when it, is going to get better for Josh Allen. I think you're going to see that going forward. I think you're going to see him settle down. I think Gabe Davis might be getting healthier. And if you've got, and I'll say this, and I said this at the game on yesterday, excuse me. If Shakir is as good as advertised, if he is good and you have Gabe Davis healthy, that's not good for the rest of the NFL, because you saw how good they were with a Cole Beasley who was slowing down. Shakir is and potentially can be a better version of what Cole Beasley once was. I think they beat the Chiefs by at least 14, go into the bye week to then come out of that and beat the Packers and move to 6-1. I think the Bills are in a really good position. My biggest fear is that they come out of that bye week and beat the Chiefs or the Packers 6-1, and you're talking they could potentially go 16-1 because the rest of that schedule is really easy. But aside from that, Nate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, everything you mentioned, just thinking of the fact that the Bills will get a day and a half more of rest on this week compared to the Chiefs. Everything you guys just mentioned, I think I'm looking at the Bills to come away with a 31-23 win over the Chiefs. The Chiefs are still the Chiefs, but everything, I mean, you guys put it succinctly, the Bills have been building their roster to beat this team, and they've done it before. They just didn't do it in the playoffs last season. And now you're adding in a Von Miller, a piece that they didn't have last season, and they've just added more weapons. And they're just, they're missing Trey White, but they missed Trey White last season. So I think they're just a few stops away from winning them. And I think that they're just banging on all cylinders offensively, which is where you want to be before going into a game like this. Unlike maybe perhaps the Ravens game the week before, I think they're in a good spot. And I think that they did not forget at all what happened. And I think they come into this next game with a chip on their shoulder more so than the Chiefs will, even if the Chiefs lose, just because of what happened. So hopefully the Bills do win. They get that, head-to-head tiebreaker over them, and they don't forget what it was like to lose last season when they see them in the playoffs, and hopefully it's in Buffalo when they do, because I'll tell you what, the Bills having Tre'Davious White back in the playoffs, the Bills having Von Miller, which they didn't have last season in the playoffs, it being in Buffalo, I mean, that's a total – that could be a 14-point win in the playoffs based on all of those factors alone.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot going ahead, and obviously we still don't even know about things like Christian McCaffrey, like an Odell Beckham, or even players that we didn't even think about. Somebody mentioned Austin Corbett, a nice little guard in there. There's a lot of pieces that are out there, and Brandon Beane has proven he is aggressive and will make moves. That being said, that's all I got for tonight, and I appreciate you two gentlemen stepping in tonight. So tell people where they can find your awesome content.
As always, you can find me at Kevin Massare, like the handle says, at cover1.net.com. You can find us all over the internet. So you know where to find me. Some of my best takes are on Twitter. And then you can find me on the Going Deep podcast, 7 p.m. Actually, 6:30 tomorrow. We have a really great guest from Arrowhead. He's going to be on to break down and kind of give us his side of things, as he's going to be emotional off of this game, this 1-point game going on here now. So that's the best place to find me.
Awesome. Yeah, and Thomas, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that. This was a really fun time. You guys are class acts all the way, and I'm not just pandering because you're having me on. But no, this was a lot of fun. I truly appreciate it. You can find us at CTW Pod, like the Twitter handle says. So like at Circling the Wagons Pod. We do a recap show after every game, after every Sunday or Monday or whenever the game happens to be. And BuffaloRumblings.com, the Buffalo Rumblings Podcast Network, which there's only about 16 or 17 of us at this point. So you can find us on there at CTW, anywhere you're looking around. We're on Instagram too, which is basically where I post my meme videos and any memes that we have and fun stuff like that. Any interesting Twitter takes we'll do there too. But it's mostly Twitter and a little bit of Instagram.
Awesome. Well, hey, as always, I truly do appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys stepping on. Great content as always. And, if you want to check out any of the other content we've had, you've had Kevin before and other great guests, you can actually go on our YouTube page and see all of the past shows that we've had. Go on bflolatenight.com. You'll see all of the streaming platforms that you can find our content, including Spotify. But as always, truly appreciate you guys stopping in, taking some time. The people that comment tonight, whether it was Dave or Robbie and D. Raleigh, appreciate you guys all coming in tonight. As always, this has been Buffalo Late Night. I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. You can find me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss again. And as always, go Bills.
The Bills make me wanna shout. Kick your heels up and shout. Throw your hands up and shout. Throw your head back and shout. Come on now, the Bills are making it happen now. Stand up now, come on and shout. Yeah, yeah.